Ladies and gentlemen, we welcome you to episode number 48 of the Primetime Rundown interview series powered by StreamYard right here on the Eastern Observer. I'm Joey Jarzynka. We are grateful to have with us here this evening Detroit Red Wings play-by-play broadcaster, one of the greatest in the game of hockey, Ken Daniels. Ken, how are you? And thank you so much for joining me here tonight.
All good, Joey. I'm doing okay. Hope you are too. And gives me something to do until we get back to playing. So pleased to be here.
I'm glad to hear that. And I'm hoping that you and your family are good during this quarantine and holiday season, if you will. It's crazy how it's been almost 300 days since March. Crazy, right?
Yeah. And I remember the day because we were in Washington and it was prior to the basketball game that night. And we had flown into Washington for a game the next day. And I remember in the lobby, and I said to Dan Bilesma and Jeff Blashill, when we were standing there, I said, and then we're going up in the elevator and we're talking, we got off on our floor. And I said, as soon as one basketball player tests positive, we're all screwed because they were going at the same time. Or I don't know if it said basketball player. I said, as soon as one player tests positive, we're screwed.
Yeah.
And they said, well, yeah, because what do you do? And later that night, it happened. And so as soon as I heard that, and I don't know whether I heard at 10 or 9:30 that night about the basketball game, just my room watching TV. We'd gone down for dinner and come back up. And I said, we're not playing tomorrow. Can't. If that's canceled, we're done. And I didn't think it would be this long. And then when we flew back home and waiting around the next day, and I knew we'd never play that game, it was March 12th or March 11th, whatever it was. And we landed from our private jet that we travel with on the Red Wings. And I remember walking out with Trevor Daley and we had our bags and we were going through the door. And at that time, we're thinking maybe it's 2 weeks, maybe it's 3 weeks, didn't know what we were in for, what the world was in for. And Trevor Daley turned to me and he said, I didn't want it to end like this.
Yeah.
And I thought, wow, yeah, you made probably your last year, but that was it. I got in my car and I said, end like this. Wow, we may not play again. And for all those guys, and even a referee like Dan O'Halloran, and he was finished. And, he was going to do his last game at Little Caesars Arena in April. And we were going to do an interview about it. Just done. So all that planning of all those people, and obviously a lot more heartache that followed other than that, that's small potatoes, I guess. But still, to their lives, it's a big thing. They didn't want to go out that way. And just the world had a way of sending the message, no, you are. And there's nothing you could do about it.
And even for you, too, as a broadcaster who's been covering or who's been working for the Detroit Red Wings organization for so many years, following, nearly 20 full years of playoff berths back to back to back. And then all of a sudden, you guys for the last few seasons have had, rebuilding years, obviously. And the last few years for you have come to an end around April. But now, does it feel weird, or did it feel weird, rather, to end even earlier than the month of April? How did that feel for you?
Well, it felt weird. Yeah, I knew we didn't have long to go. And after a 17-win season, you could say, well, we're ready to end this thing. I could say that. It wasn't like you were in the midst of going for a playoff spot. I think that would have been even harder to take.
Yeah.
But then you would have had the payoff later that you maybe would have been in it.
Yeah.
Even though we would have been calling some games at that point, had been there. So it was strange. I really didn't give it much thought at that time because I knew everybody was in the same boat. So I thought, okay, let's give it a few weeks. So really at that point, it was just what was going on around the world. It wasn't so much, wow, I'm not calling games. I knew it would again at some point.
Yeah, no, exactly. That's, and obviously we don't know what the deal is right now, but as of today, January 13th will be the start of a brand new season, whole bunch of different divisions, realignment, going to be the United States split up into 3 different divisions, while all 7 teams in Canada will be playing their own little competition starting most likely January 13th. So let's get things started in terms of you, Ken. For those that are just tuning in for the first time, this interview series, 48 episodes in, is about our guests and beyond the media guide. So, whatever is written in the media guide, we want to know a little bit more about you outside of there, whatever else is in writing. So you are Canadian. You were born in Toronto in Ontario, and you got your career started in Oshawa, not too far away from Toronto. And, because we are obviously on a little bit of a time crunch, we want to know, you got to Sportsnet The Fan, 590, or at the time was known as CJCL. And then you got to work for the Maple Leafs and you got into CBC. So this is big time for you. And the craziest part is that you were only out of college, out of York University, mind you, for not even a full 15 years yet, Ken. Talk about that and for how the industry has changed today, where 15 years, you're still working your way up. And for you, you were on national television.
Yeah, I mean, 1980, I guess, right out of York University, I had worked in the furniture business, though I really didn't know what I was doing. I was working for a friend's father, just signed the deal, and was applying at radio stations. And then someone hired me with zero experience in Oshawa, 40 minutes outside Toronto. So I did the political beat. The key is, and as I tell kids who try to get in the business, although it's changed now and a lot of folks are doing podcasts, which is great. Yeah. Any writing you can do, any podcasting you can do is wonderful, because I don't know if the same job opportunities apply now. If you can intern at a radio station, learn how to do it, just see the ins and outs, whatever you can do, interning is great. Asking questions, not to the point of pestering someone, but wanting to know the business. And when I applied for many different radio stations while in the furniture business, I found someone after going here. Well, I know this guy here, call this guy here. This guy says, well, I know this guy here. And I just called people, just cold call. And before I went for the job in Oshawa, and I really wanted it, it was through some good contacts, although the guy didn't know me. And I was speaking with my brother, who's 11 years older than me. I have three older siblings, and my dad. And they said, sell yourself. And I did. I went to that job. I had no experience, except, I had a cable show for a little bit, Willow Downs Cable. So I had MTHL Weekly, Metro Toronto Hockey League Weekly. So I did a cable show for a short time. And I was on, during high school, I was doing the PA announcements, imitating Leo Cahill, a former Argo coach who was on Chum Radio in Toronto. I'd do his voice, updating the school sports. I'd write my own sportscasts. I still have them. And then they'd give me 5 minutes over the PA system in high school, where Mike Keenan was my high school hockey coach at the time. Wow. So I would do that. And that was really my only training. Although I grew up listening to Brian Williams, the Canadian Brian Williams, the Dean of Sportscasting in Canada, and Jeff Ansell at Chum FM, Rick Hodge at Chum FM, Brian Henderson at Chum AM. I just took those voices beyond listening to just the play-by-play of Foster Hewitt or Bill Hewitt or Dan Kelly out of St. Louis. I'd go to bed listening to Dan Kelly call games on KMOX St. Louis when I was 10 and 11 years old, or falling asleep listening to Foster Hewitt call Toronto Maple Leaf games. It was just a dream I had from the age of 10. So fast forward to 1980, when I finally have an opportunity to apply at a radio station with zero experience, I sold myself. I said, I want this more than anything I've ever wanted in my entire life. And sure enough, in the end, when I left there, about a year later, and I got the overnight job at CJCL Radio in Toronto, doing news and sports overnights from 9 at night until 7 in the morning, and going to the cop shop in the morning and writing up stories from the overnight police blotter for the morning guys that they never used, but it was just experience to write them up. And I remember Mark Orton, who was the station manager and the news director at CKAR in Oshawa, CKQT FM, so worked AM and FM. And I said, why did you hire me? With no regrets, I hope. And he said, you sold yourself. You wanted this job. And I did. And the first, even learning how to do interviews, Stu Billett with Stu Billett Productions, who did The People's Court, which was all Judge Judy and everything else. Now that was the precursor to all of that. And I had a half-an-hour interview for CKQT FM on a Sunday, and I'm interviewing Stu Billett. So just learning how to ask questions in 8 or 10 seconds. Don't ramble like I am now for a minute and try to get a question out. So keep your question short. All those things on how to write for a newscast, I basically learned on the job, all because I sold myself, and people were kind enough to put up with mistakes because they weren't paying you a whole lot of money. But they did that, and they'd have to live with your mistakes too. So that's how it all started. I don't know if I sort of answered your question, but but it's just basically moving your way up in the industry.
Yeah, it's really crazy again because, as everything has been evolving throughout the time with technology and how the industry continues to change, now we're starting to see broadcasters at the college level, some even at the professional level, or semi-professional level in minor league baseball here in the United States, where some are now being laid off because of COVID, and now the radio broadcasters are now simulcasting for their television broadcasts as well. So, to hear within, again, to have barely any experience and to be able to get this job at CBC, and to be able to do also to call Olympic sports for the Summer Olympics in Seoul, the 1996 Olympics in Atlanta, to be able to call cycling, baseball, canoeing, kayaking, tennis. Ken, this is massive stuff because, again, people today, like on Westwood One or anything along those lines, would be really yearning for those students or those up-and-coming broadcasters, because not all those people want to call the four major sports. What would be your advice to those today, especially during this COVID era, to really just keep their foot or keep the pedal to the metal, if you will?
Well, versatility is key. I think, just do anything. And when I started in radio, and I knew sports well enough and played hockey, obviously, and baseball in high school, etc. Whenever the news people needed someone to fill in, I'll have Ken do it. He can do the sports. Even reading a weathercast, doing whatever. I did the political beat. I covered City Hall. I did Queen's Park, the Ontario legislature. So I had an office at City Hall. And I remember someone more well-versed than I am in city politics, and we're good buddies, Steve Paikin, who still does a television show in Canada, TV Ontario. He's been the host there for many years and great in the political beat in Canada. And he'd sit in the City Hall chambers all day listening to these reports, and I'd go out, I'd disappear, I'd come back, grab a clip from one of the city commissioners, whatever, and put a 45-second clip together for radio. And he said, how come I'm driving home? I'm listening to your report on CJCL, and he was on CFTR AM. And he said, and your report sounded better than mine. And I said, because I'm a dummy. I don't get bogged down by details. Just give me the basics, throw a clip in there and tell it like the average dummy like me and try to make them understand it. So he obviously progressed and did very well for himself. But that's what I did. I didn't get bogged down in the details, but it was always versatility. So whatever you can do. Even when I started at the Olympics in Seoul in '88, I was working for CBC Television. And if I can backtrack, I was doing radio, then applied for CBC TV many times, and the guy would never take my call. And this is all in my book, If These Walls Could Talk. And when I went down, because I had no food at home, there you go, rice. So when I went down to the Blue Jay game, because we were covering the Blue Jays and the radio station had the Blue Jay rights, and I had a media pass. It was a Friday night. I didn't have a date that night, so I had no food in my house except Twinkies and Joe Louis, which is a delicious Canadian little cake. Anyway, I said I should go down and get the Blue Jay media meal. I had my pass. I'll go down and see who's there and watch the ball game, watch the Blue Jays. So this would have been like 1985. And the Jays were just coming on at that time with George Bell and Jesse Barfield and those guys. And I ran into Don Martin, who was on CBC Television working with Brian Williams at the time, who I'd written a letter to and gone down and watched him do the sports at CBC. And Don Martin came up and said, what are you doing this summer? And I said, well, just doing radio. I'd met him a couple of times. And he said, we need a summer replacement. I'm going to the Canada Summer Games. I said, for TV? He goes, yeah, they're doing auditions now. I said, holy crap. I said, I've called Howard Bernstein, the exec producer over there, and he's never taken my call. He said, call him on Monday. He'll take your call. Now, Don never even got to Howard, but sure enough, I knew to call on Monday. I auditioned. And with another guy from Montreal, we did consecutive weekends. I wasn't very good, but I wasn't horrible. But believe me, I wasn't good. I screwed up a few times too. Oh my God. But it was after a CFL football game. So it was so late. It was like 2:30 Toronto time, 11:30 football game ends out in BC. Yeah. Across the network. So local news was still coming on that late. So very few people saw me screw up, except one of my best friend's brothers called me the next day laughing his ass off. Anyway, but I wound up getting the job. So all that because I had no food at home. I went down to the Blue Jay game in the media room, ran into Don Martin. He said apply. So what I always tell people, they say, boy, you were really lucky. And I say no. And I said this in my book. I said luck And Dan Schulman wrote a similar thing because it's similar for him too. And Dan is amazing at what he does for ESPN. And I said, luck is when preparation meets opportunity. So I prepared all my life, whether it be falling asleep to Foster Hewitt, whether it be working the radio, whatever you're doing, or sportscast, or whom I'd watched or thought I could do this or practice myself. So my point is, when that job came open at CBC, I was confident enough to apply. Was I lucky? Sure. But luck is when preparation meets opportunity. So everything I had done to that moment, when that job came up, I was prepared to seize it. The opportunity was there, but I prepared for it. I wasn't as good as I was going to be, because you only get better with reps.
Yeah.
The more you do things, you only get better with reps. So luck is when preparation meets opportunity. I was lucky, right place, right time. But if I hadn't done anything or prepared myself, or was just off the street and hadn't done anything, or 7 years of radio or 6 years of radio by that time, I wouldn't have been prepared. So every little step, you can't look big picture. It's just little steps along the way. And before you know it, you're charting your own path. And that's how I got into television.
It's absolutely unbelievable to get into television that way. And then 1997, you have a life-changing opportunity here in the United States with one of the original 6 hockey teams in the Detroit Red Wings. And as we just showed the book just a couple of seconds ago, If These Walls Could Talk, by you, you had it. You were hired by the Detroit Red Wings. This is life-changing stuff. Did you ever picture this to ever come to fruition?
No, not well. I had done Toronto Maple Leafs radio, and again, that was luck was when preparation meets opportunity. They thought I could do it because I'd done the Olympics in Seoul and all those sports you mentioned earlier that I knew nothing about when they sent me in at the last minute. And Bob Moyer, who was exec producer of our Olympics in Seoul, and I was terrified of him, and Arthur Smith, who went on to Los Angeles to produce many terrific television shows. Those were my bosses at CBC. And there was one night I came back and they needed someone to call judo, a gold medal match that Canada was involved in. I knew nothing about judo.
Yeah.
They handed me the judo book. I got in a cab in Seoul to take me to the arena where they were doing the judo. And the guy said, find an analyst when you get over there. I found a German guy because Germany wasn't competing. And he said, I can help you. And I said, I know nothing about judo. I could I'd done enough listening to play-by-play, and I'd done the track and road racing in Seoul and other things and some baseball. So, and canoeing and kayaking. So when it came to judo, and I said, well, how do you pin a guy? I know it's called an ippon. So I said, do me a favor. If you notice the way the guy gets pinned and he gets pinned, just say, Ken, he's done it. And he did. So I knew the match was over because I wouldn't have known. And he said, Ken, he's done it. And I said, ippon, and they win, and the gold medal, and whatever, and went off. And I got back, and Bob Moyer, and I walked into the office in this deep, gravelly voice. And when I went back to Seoul, to the main central CBC studios there, and Bob said, boy, for a guy who didn't know anything about judo, you should have pulled that one off. I did. But again, I was nervous, but I got through it. And if you can get through that, you can get through the next thing. So having that play-by-play experience led me to, I believe it was 1989 or early 90, when the fill-in for Toronto Maple Leafs radio couldn't do the game.
Yes.
But I was at the radio station. And Alan Davis, who was a friend of mine, the exec producer at the radio station, thought, I need you to call Toronto Maple Leafs hockey tomorrow night, or maybe it was Wednesday night, Boston and Toronto. And I said, Alan, I'm moving that day. I just bought a house, my first house. It would have been 1989. And I said, I can't do the game. He said, have someone else move your friggin' ottoman. You're doing the game in more colorful language than that.
Yeah.
So I said, okay. And I did the game, went to overtime. Boston won it 3-2. And I'm thinking when I'm calling the game from Maple Leaf Gardens, a place I grew up, it was the most religious spot in the world to me was Maple Leaf Gardens. That's a place, I first saw my hockey game, grew up listening to Foster Hewitt, watching Bill Hewitt, listening to Bob Cole. I get to call a game from Maple Leaf Gardens, and I did. So I ended up doing Toronto Maple Leafs radio for a number of years. Then John Shannon came on board, whom I just met once or twice, had been with CBC, was producing the games for the Minnesota North Stars with Dave Hodge doing play-by-play. I'd probably met John a couple of times on the road in Minneapolis. After a game, we'd go for a pop with the, team stayed over then. They didn't fly out right after the game. So I was working for the Leafs, but we'd stayed over. And I met John a few times. So John is now coming to Hockey Night in Canada in 93, 94. And John said, I heard you doing the Maple Leaf games on radio. I love it. I hear you may have an opportunity to go to Vancouver to do games there. I did if Jim Houston didn't go, but I knew Jim would get the job. So he said, I'd love you to bring you on TV to do play-by-play for Hockey Night in Canada. And I'd already been hosting Hockey Night, but had never done play-by-play on TV before. And he said, but you have to leave radio. I don't want any bad habits, meaning being too descriptive on television. Which I get. And I didn't have to worry about that because the radio station I was at was losing the rights. CJCL Radio was losing the Maple Leaf rights. So that's how I got my job in a TV play-by-play. So now fast forward from there to 97, done 2 or 3 years of Hockey Night play-by-play. I'm doing the series Buffalo, Philadelphia, second round, 1997 in Buffalo. And the late, great Dave Strader, who was doing the game for ESPN International, freelancing there with Mickey Redmond. And he came into the booth. I'd met Mickey only a couple of times. This would have been May of 97. And he said, they're letting the guy go who replaced me in Detroit. Mickey said, you should apply, because he'd heard your stuff, as have I, for the job in Detroit. Thought, okay. So this would have been May. In July, I go down to interview with the Red Wings. I don't hear anything. Because, this was early June. They're in the cup run. I go down, and then the accident happens with Vladdy and Sergei.
Yeah.
Tragic limo accident.
Yeah.
So when I saw that, I said, I'm so far off their radar now. They've got other stuff to worry about than me. So I didn't hear anything from them until September. So when you say, was this your dream job? My dream job was to do hosting Hockey Night, play-by-play Maple Leaf Radio. I grew up loving the Leafs. Don't anymore. And then Hockey Night in Canada. Those are really my dreams. And then Detroit comes a call. I go, okay, that would be cool. And I didn't hear from the Red Wings until around September the 5th. And the season's about to start. So I think, I don't know, I have an agent, but I don't hear anything. I agree with John Shannon on a handshake deal on a new 3-year deal to stay with Hockey Night in Canada. Then the Red Wings call the next day, to which I turned them down because I just agreed to stay with Hockey Night in Canada.
Right.
Then Arthur Smith, who I spoke of earlier, was my boss with the Olympics, CBC Television. He's now running Fox Sports in Los Angeles. Arthur calls me.
Oh, okay.
Irate, saying, do you know how hard I worked to get you to Detroit? And you turned it down? Now, I had no idea at the time any of this was going on, but the money wasn't right. The situation wasn't right. Moving wasn't right. And it was so late. Then I called John Shannon, who was my boss at Hockey Night in Canada, who I just agreed to the deal with. And I said, John, what do I do? And he said, I can probably give you 24 of 27 weekends. They were doing double headers then, but they didn't have triple headers, didn't have a lot of other nights going on. And he said, the only way you're going to get better, is what I spoke to earlier, is more reps. The only way you're going to get better and as good as you can be, because Bob Cole and Chris Cuthbert were still in front of me there at Hockey Night at the time. Don Whitman was still around at the time. God rest his soul. So I was number 4, really, in the pecking order at the time. And he said, is to get more games. He said, you got to go to Detroit. So he really made the decision for me. And then we talked, negotiated, and all worked out. And I'm glad he did. And it was a fabulous decision on my part because of so many changes with the network, et cetera. So I'd already achieved my goal doing national TV, Hockey Night, done Olympics, Maple Leafs Radio. This was just a wonderful opportunity to improve at what I do and call as many games as I can and with a great organization. So it was really a different step. It wasn't so much a goal of mine to be with one team, but it worked out great.
Not only did it work out great, Ken, but 1997-98, that first year, I don't know, I think that was, let's see, the 9th Stanley Cup championship for the Detroit Red Wings. So you go there, year number 1, and you're on the call for their 9th Stanley Cup. Now, I have to ask you this.
Well, not on the call. Don't forget, I didn't do radios on the call.
Oh, right, yes.
TV.
Yeah. So with that being said, you're still working for the team now. Yeah. And did you feel a little spoiled that that year number one, you get to the team and okay, they continue their excellence?
Oh, yeah. Oh, they started that year. And remember, that was the year with the Carolina and the offer and Sergei Fedorov and wasn't playing till something like January. And Mickey, I'd come in September and you're feeling your oats trying to find your way there. And Mickey said, wait till you see Fedorov play night in and night out. Oh, my goodness. Now, we'd lost Konstantinov, unfortunately. They just won the Cup the year before. So the Stanley Cup's up at training camp. And I go, how cool is this? So you're part of it. And then finding your way with Mickey and things are going good. Then Fedorov shows up. And yeah, it was a great run. And back then, television at least got to do 2 rounds, local TV. Now only get to do 1 round, right? So yeah, I was spoiled, and as I said at the time, keep spoiling me. It was wonderful, and then to host that parade and be out there at Hart Plaza, and you're looking out to 1 million people. Yeah, that was at least the number said 1 million people. I don't know if it was, but to be in that parade that year was great. It was just be part of that. Yeah, it was fantastic. It was great.
As a broadcaster now, I want to fast forward just a little bit because obviously now the Red Wings are playing at Little Caesars Arena, and just a few years back, the infamous Joe Louis Arena closed their doors. Your most favorite memory from the Joe, and your most favorite memory now, obviously there's going to be a lot more moving forward, I hope, but from the Joe, your number one memory that you could think of?
Well, I think because a 98 was the win in Washington, so we're on the road. I think 02 against Carolina because you're there. So celebrating within the Joe as Scotty's going around telling people I'm done, and came up to me on the ice and goes, I'm finished now. So moments like those you remember in the small confines of that dressing room at Joe Louis. So those are great memories, and I think the best memories there of the Joe is just the smell. And I'm not talking about where people will say urine falling down the stairs in the back way when people were drunk. That's not what I mean. It was just a certain scent when you walked into Joe Louis, and the intimacy and the people, and Eugene in the elevator when you went up every night in the media elevator, when you walked in through the bowels of the building there, and you see Eugene and you're going upstairs, and just all the wonderful people that you met. And that because at Little Caesars, as great a building as that is, it's more spread out. You don't see the same people. It's just, it's the way business is, and just more people in the building and how it's run. It's like every other building. I remember Maple Leaf Gardens was so intimate and small. And then you end up in the Air Canada Center. And I'd gone by that point, but I remember being in Maple Leaf Gardens every day. And the Joe had that same feel of that nostalgia. And so those are my favorite memories that I took from there.
So a few more opportunities that you took, obviously, and as you did allude to earlier, more reps, etc. You were hired by Versus, then obviously that turned into NBCSN, and you also do Big Ten hockey as well. So talk about that and how big that is for your continuous improvement as a play-by-play broadcaster to now step into the hockey ranks.
Yeah, it was fun. In 2011, I started with Versus, and I've probably done over the years. I don't do as many now. I had a couple last year, and some were canceled by COVID. So I don't get that many. And they have their, some guys on staff there. And now Doc's left, and probably Johnny Forson will step in, and Kenny Albert and the like. So, which is fine. Those are fun, but you're also putting that in where, our team comes first, and then you're traveling commercial that you're not used to and getting somewhere and going, where I'm at the point now where that's okay. It was fun. I enjoyed doing them for sure. And it's different on a national scale, though a lot of the games that I've done for NBCSN or Versus, some of those involve the Red Wings. So, you're used to that team, and then you got to make sure you're not favoring the Red Wings. For me, and I've always said this about my call or anything else, and boy, you got really excited when the other team scored. I said, yeah, because the game's the thing. You should be. Don't sell the game short. I mean, there's a level if the Red Wings score in a game, even on, we're doing a Red Wing game and they score late, sure, you're excited. If another team scores late, you're not that excited. Maybe not at a Red Wing level, but there's still got to be a level you get to because the game's the thing, and you don't undersell the game. So when you're calling on a national scale and you've got the Red Wings, let's say against Boston, you got to know to bring it down and keep it completely even. There's no just a little bit more. But I don't think I had much of a problem that way, because to me, I just love the game. And if something exciting happens in the game, It's what it's about. It's the game. So it was fun to do that. But again, I've been on the Hockey Night in Canada scale too. So I've done national games before. So it was fun. It was different. Calling college hockey for me was always great. And so I remember the first year I came here, I think I called 101 games that year, including Red Wing games and including college games, doing 19 of those. So to call Michigan and Michigan State, and this was one of the CCHA before it was the Big Ten, to do those games, the neatest thing for me was you met the guys who you probably knew would make it to the National Hockey League at some point, but you got to know them. Then you walk into the dressing room. I remember one day we're at Maple Leaf Gardens, we're at the Air Canada Center, and the usher came over to me and he said, Mike Komisarek wants to see you. Just because I'd met Mike during his time in Michigan, or Horkoff, and all these guys who you called their games in college. Justin Abdelkader winds away the Red Wings. It was just cool that you got to know them before they made pro and they got to know you. And I hope all that doesn't change now because of COVID, where you can go into the room and meet the guys. And that's what worries me about the industry going forward, how we're getting used to doing what we're doing now, and probably more for journalists like those who work for The Athletic, which is a great service, and those who want those one-on-one stories within the room and can go up to a player or talk about something away from the scrums. And I'm worried that down the road, we're going to lose that. This is convenient, but it's not the same, the one-on-one. And I hope we don't lose that going forward, although this is changing the industry.
Well, you speak about one-on-ones. Now, how about calling a game off of a monitor? And I got to tell you, I think that is really an amazing thing how these broadcasters, especially during the return to play format, how they did it in rounds one all the local guys rather.
Mm-hmm.
And then we also heard Doc Emmerich do it from his den or his basement or his living room, wherever he was in his basement. Yeah. And where he was doing that, he still said, obviously had like a couple of rough patches here and there, but he got through it and it sounded really good in his final season. Talk about how would there possibly be a chance where you might have to do that? And what would that be? What would that entail for you?
Well, the chances are 100% we'll be doing it this year for sure. We won't be traveling. We'll be calling road games off a monitor just about 8 minutes from my house at Fox Sports Detroit, and home games hopefully from Little Caesars Arena. Hopefully there'll be a TV truck there, our producer directors. Obviously, there won't be pregame meals, I wouldn't think. You'll come into the building, go right up to the booth or wherever we are, and you'll call the game and distance from Mick. But I would hope that home games will be done that way and road games will be out of our Southfield studios at Fox Sports Detroit, or whatever we're called at that time, because now part of Sinclair, as all the Fox regionals have been moved. But that's going to happen going forward. I hope, once there's vaccines and for the 21-22 season, we're back to normal and traveling and doing games where they should be. I've called 2 Olympics, so I've done stuff off monitors before. And when I worked for CBC National in Canada, we called a lot of road racing off monitors. So I've done it before. I think for hockey, we're going to have that high wide so you can see what happened, different point of view cameras and different stats monitors and the big 70-inch television. It's more for, when a goal is scored, and we always tell analysts, at least Mickey does, and I learned this from an early age, and I've worked with probably 50 or 60 analysts and many just coming up in the business. The key is for any analyst in any sport is how and why. It's not what. Tell us how and why. If a guy comes out from behind the net and puts a backhander up top over the goalie's shoulder, don't tell us that. Watch this move. Watch him come out front and put a backhander over the goalie's shoulder. How and why did it happen? How it happened? Maybe there was a bad line change and he got loose down low. Why did it happen? Because watch the forward here who maybe notices the defenseman here is a right-hand shot. So he knew he'd have to cross over and comes out the other side knowing he's a right-hand shot, couldn't get to him in time. That's how and why. That's what the fans want to know. How and why all the time. So for the analyst, and hopefully we'll have a point of view camera that the league will set up that we'll be able to see even from a studio, because when you're watching live in the building, you can see a line change. Often I'm watching the play here, Mickey's watching long behind. Or if I'm watching in the building and I'm seeing DeKaiser behind the net and I'm seeing Zadina come up through center, although that wouldn't happen last year because Danny was hurt. But at any rate, if it does this year, if Danny's behind the net and sees Zadina, I can see Zadina coming off the bench and I know where the puck's going. I don't necessarily watch where the puck is.
Right.
I look ahead and see where the puck's going. You lose some of that off a monitor. So you have to adjust a little bit, but hopefully on the how and why, we've got a point of view camera and a high wide that Mickey can see and take it. That's why that goal happened. So we'll work around it. I think they're going to do that for basketball, and we're going to do that for hockey at least this year, and hopefully a year from now, if the world's in a good place, we'll be back at it. And hockey takes a couple of years, but return to normal and get the game back revenue-wise and everything else.
Fingers crossed. That would be really great to obviously see you back on the road, and hopefully one of these days, because we are out here on Long Island, maybe at the new Belmont Arena, we'll be seeing you. That would be pretty cool.
You know what? That would be nice. And my producer, my director, Mark Isofano, said, you know, in the building at Barclays, they had the car. Right?
Yeah.
That was a really weird thing. So in my ear, it's the first time I actually, and I've laughed sometimes, you hit a mute button. So, and I said something about the car in the corner because I shot it off the glass. And I said, you know, went right at that car or whatever it was. And he said in my ear that only I could hear, he said, yeah, and in the new building at Belmont, they're going to put a horse there.
Yeah, I mean, hey, listen, you never know.
It made me laugh because of Belmont Park. It made me laugh, and I went quiet for, had to be 15 seconds. Then I hear him laugh, and then my producer starts to laugh, and there was just silence going on. But I thought that was pretty funny. Belmont, they should put a horse up there in the corner rather than the car. But I can't wait. They deserve a building. Although, you know what? I love Nassau. Yeah. I love that place. Not so much the hotel across the parking lot, but I love that place. And you want to talk about an intimate building. Although the thing about that place, the Coliseum, that I could never understand was, at least for visitors, all the writers are at center ice. Visiting television is like at one end face-off circle to the goal line.
Yeah.
I could never understand where the writers had the best view at center and visiting television is at one end of the rink. That was always strange to me.
Everything is completely backwards. That's really what it comes down to over there at the Coliseum. So, Ken, do you have time for 2 more questions?
I got time for 4 more. How's that?
Okay, great. So, If These Walls Could Talk by Ken Daniels right here. So obviously this book, I have yet to read it. I will be 100% honest, but 317 total pages, Ken. This is really, I can't wait to read this over my Christmas break. But this is phenomenal. And just by looking at some of the stories and seeing stuff from the press box, from the locker room, from on ice level, talk about what made you want to write this book. And not only that, you, along with many other authors, one that I could think of right away, Phil Bourque as well. Mm-hmm. He also wrote one for the Pittsburgh Penguins. Yeah. So talk about what made you want to do this and add your name to a fantastic list of hockey analysts and hockey players, etc.
Well, great question, Joey. What made me do it was Bob Duff came up to me and said, they wanted me to ask you, Triumph out of Chicago Publishing, if you'd be interested in doing a book. So I said, oh, you all, let me read it. And they gave me Mario and Pemba's at the time. And I leafed through Mario's, who was a Tiger broadcaster. Nice job. I said, there were no pictures of family and stuff. They're all stock photos. And I said, I want family. Yes, it's Red Wing stories, but I also want it to be my story, to tell people like I told you. And some may like it, some may not. Some wanted more Red Wing stories than that. There are a lot of Red Wing stories in there. But I wanted for the young aspiring broadcaster to get into the business. Again, luck is when preparation meets opportunity. Stories like that anything is possible, how I dreamed it as a kid, and you can do it. I wanted that to be part of it too. So that's, once they gave that okay, a lot of Red Wing stories in there. I wasn't going to give the deep, dark secrets away. I'm not, a reporter for the team. I work for the team. But there are some good stories, and Bob Duff had a lot of stories of which we collaborated on. So Bob helped me, and I wanted to be in my words. So Bob gave me an outline, and then I rewrote a lot of the things in there because I wanted it to sound like me. And when Bob came to me, and then my son, who's since passed, December 7th of 2016, and when I went to Jamie with the idea back then, in would have been, 2015, or whenever I started writing it, I guess. And he said, why don't you wait until you're 80? And then you can tell all the stories and no one's going to give a crap what you say about them. I said, well, by the time I'm 80, I'm going to forget all the stories. So if I don't write them now, at any rate, so by the time we got around to doing it, and yes, it would have been 2016 we started writing. I think the book came out in 17, and then Jamie passed in December that year, and I started writing it. So I took about a 3-month pause at that time, obviously. And then all of a sudden we had the deadline in April. So March, we went to Costa Rica, and Florida had a break, or in February, maybe it was Olympic break. I can't remember what it was, but we had a break for a bit, and I went away and I just wrote like crazy, and along with Bob, and we got it together. So what made me do it was just an opportunity, and I wanted to tell the stories. I didn't want to wait. Maybe I got another one in me some days, but you know what? It got me to reflect. And I think with my son's passing, it was also cathartic and got me looking through photo albums. And I've kept photo albums my career in scrapbooks. My mother started it and I carried on. So I probably got 18 or 20 of them here that it got me to look back at that I would have never looked at. And a lot of the stuff I was saving was for my son, that he'd have them. And you know what we do with our parents' stuff, they give it to us. We never look at it. Maybe he would, maybe he wouldn't. So I just wanted to document it all. By the time we got through it, it winds up being, you know, you're responsible for 80,000 words. And I think it was a little more than that, but they give you what you need to do. So that's what I did.
It's really amazing, and as you were telling the story, I got a couple of chills, because I was in contact with the people at your son's foundation, Jamie Daniels Foundation. We'll put up the graphic here. Last week was Giving Tuesday, and we've been posting about the Jamie Daniels Foundation all throughout, ever since you and I got into contact together, and I'm extremely grateful to be able to spread the words of, for this amazing cause. And the Jamie Daniels Foundation, obviously, it's very difficult to ask a mini background of it, but also where we can find out more information and how to really donate. The story, as I'm saying it, is very difficult for even me to bring it up, Ken.
Well, listen, I appreciate it, Joey. I know it's hard. The more I talk about Jamie, it keeps his memory alive.
Yeah.
And as I like to say, you can wallow in it, and people say, boy, I don't know how you do what you do. Sometimes I don't know how I do what I do.
Yeah.
In doing it, and with the foundation, which has been so much help, and Jamie's mom. And I think for us, we just have to keep his name alive. And I like to say to people, when I see Jamie again someday, he's going to say to me, Dad, how did you live your life? And I'm going to say, I lived my life doing the best I could for others in your name. That's how I'm living my life. And yes, there are many days of sadness. You cry a little less, but every time you go somewhere, and for any parent who's lost a kid, I'm not alone. We're members of a team we don't want to be a part of. You go see a dad, or I go to rinks watching some of my friends' kids play who may be younger than me, and you miss those moments. And I remember watching Jamie play goal, and I still have his goalie mask here in my office that he had. And I see kids out in the park and walking their dog, and a father and son holding their hands. It hits in your gut. You're never forgetting it. So, we're not alone. And for people who do comments, he should have known better. Sure, he should have. Anyone should have. It's substance use disorder, but it's a mental illness, and the chemical receptors in your brain change, and you're with your peers. And when even he was pledging at his frat, they had him take drugs as part of it. And then a friend, after Jamie passed, called me and felt guilty and wanted my forgiveness, because he was the one who turned Jamie on to opioids. Because again, if a doctor prescribed it, how can an opioid hurt you? Well, it can. And in Jamie's case, he was addicted within 5 days. You don't know what the brain's going to do. And the responses to have the ability then to say no, like the Reagans in the 80s, and just say no to drugs. Well, sure. Should he have never taken anything? Absolutely. Should we never have done anything? Sure. For those who are alcoholics, should have never had a drink? Sure. Judge people. And when you read people on comments saying he should have known better, and you're self-righteous, boy, all we ask for is empathy. It's the highest form of knowledge, because it comes without judgment, not sympathy, just empathy. It could happen anywhere. And we see the numbers. We know how many 7 are dying every hour in the United States from this, and some from wisdom teeth being pulled, who got an oxycodone or anything else, or Vicodin, just for pain. There are other ways to do it. Some who just went into their medicine cabinet at home because the dad had surgery on his knee years ago, and the 14 or 15-year-old comes home and says, hey, try this. And within days, they're addicted. So I tell parents, get rid of unused medication in your home. That's first and foremost. Jamie had Adderall because he convinced a doctor, psychiatrist, that he needed more time on tests when he was in high school. So he prescribed Adderall. We didn't need the Adderall. We don't believe he ever had ADD. And he told us later he had lied because he wanted more time on tests, not because he wanted to become a drug user. Addicts don't want to be addicts. He wanted more time on tests, like so many kids who are in college are on Adderall. Well, then when Adderall and your tolerance ends, now you want something stronger. And then you can trade your Adderall for a more expensive opioid. And then you become addicted. It's a vicious circle. So I'm just telling people, don't judge. We're trying to end the shame and stigma around it. It's a mental illness. So we're trying to build safe, long-term recovery housing here in Michigan in Jamie's memory. We're making our way there with the 2 roasts we've done so far for Mickey and Scotty. And we're trying to do more. We're raising money. We've got a great collegiate recovery program for those who are in recovery at Michigan State. We'd like to do more collegiate recovery programs where we pay for the recovery coach. It's like a fitness instructor. So they're there for you. You have tailgating that is alcohol free. There are ways to do this. And those who can come out and say, you know what, I struggle with that. Good for you. And we're here to help you. Don't be scared to talk about it. End the shame and stigma. And if it's not happening in your home, pray to God it's not, but it's probably happening 3 doors down. So I ask people, don't judge and don't be so quick to point out it's not the parents. It's not the kids. Stuff happens. We all do things we shouldn't do. By the grace of God, hopefully it doesn't happen to them.
That was perfectly put, Ken. And you know what? The biggest thing too around, not only around here, just people that I know and really just around the world too, is as you brought up judging. And really the way I look at it, and I think you may be able to attest to it too, is put yourself in that person's shoes as well. And really see what that person is going through, and exactly what you brought up too about the roasts as well. You guys raised more than $250,000 to support individuals in recovery and those affected by substance use disorder just from the celebrity roast of Scotty Bowman. Ken, you guys had so many. I promise you this is the last question. There's many people that you had on, Dan Schulman being one of them. You had a few others on there as well, some even actors and actresses as well. Talk about how big this has gotten, especially not only in the Detroit area, because it was also aired on Fox Sports Detroit, but the Red Wings got involved as well. Who another thing too, they treat you like family, clearly. Otherwise, they wouldn't have put that out on social media. Yeah. But you know, this is big, and also big sponsor Delta Dental as well. Plenty of engagement, and also a big audience as well. Talk about how big this is for the organization, and also for the people that you're trying to reach out to.
Well, it's, you know, the idea of the roast, I could have done a golf tournament, and it was about 3 years ago, and Darren Pang and I were doing NBC playoffs, Washington, Columbus. And Darren was being roasted in St. Louis, and he came back and he said, I should be, it was the night before the game, and he was roasted the previous night. So he was flying in that night. We went for a steak dinner. It was about 9 o'clock, and had some drinks, and I said, how'd the roast go? And talked all about it. And he said, and I said, you know what? We're thinking of a fundraiser. This time we hadn't really thought what we were going to do. And we just started the Jamie Daniels Foundation. It's only been around for 2.5 years. And we've raised, I think all total, besides that, probably $700,000 to $800,000 so far in that time, which is remarkable. And with Delta Dental, who's been a major presenting sponsor for a couple of years, and the Illich family, who's gotten so involved with us. Marion Illich has just been so wonderful with us, and of course lost her son Ron. So to a similar addiction. So so many have come on board, but really what it is to do the roast first with Mickey a year ago, and then with Scotty now virtually, because we had to televise it. Mickey's was live, and we just hit out of the park. That night, people had so much fun at Motor City Casino. We're planning to go Scotty live, and we're planning one for next year too. We don't know who yet. We have some irons in the fire, I think, for the 29th, whatever that last Saturday is in August, at Motor City Casino for next year. We hope we go live. If not, we'll put it on TV again. So Fox Sports Detroit has been a great partner. We actually reached more people this way. But to your point of getting people to come on and be on board, I probably asked maybe 40 people. Good thing they didn't all send me a video, because we wouldn't have had room for them. but just it's people who, you know, like I love the Bare Naked Ladies and Stephen Page, who had been the co-founder and lead singer. Well, I know Steve Simmons from Sun Media or Post Media in Canada, and Steve is a cousin to Stephen Page. So I asked Steve Simmons, can you get me in touch with Stephen Page? John Keating is buddies, Fox Sports Detroit is buddies with J.K. Simmons. And then I know Mitch Albom. Then I know someone who knows Ken Dryden, who was president of the Maple Leafs when I was doing some radio for the Maple Leafs back in the 90s. So it's just, you reach out to all these people. And Scott Oak from Hockey Night in Canada, who lost his son, Bruce, 6 or 7 years ago now before Jamie. So again, I could talk with Scott lots. And Scott, who does his fundraising in Winnipeg and is building a home in memory of his late son for those in recovery, like we're going to do here in Michigan. And Scott said, you know what, Ken, after a while, when all these things, and you put the event together, he said, quote, I'm sick of me. And I said, I know exactly what you mean. Because you get sick of asking people to donate. And I know it's hard, especially in times of COVID. So to see people come through like they did, when you're asking people to come on board and help you out, it's amazing who did. And yes, some are just for a video and it didn't take a long time. I mean, heck, I do all these videos on Cameo, right? Ken Daniels TV on Cameo, if you'd like a cameo and a message for Christmas, and all the funds go to the Jamie Daniels Foundation. So that's a way people can help. And I'll send you a message. It's not just 30 seconds. I'll do a minute or two, whatever you want. You give me enough details on Cameo, I'll give you a good story. And we try to have some fun with it. You surprise some people. So we can do, I'm doing that throughout the year. So JamieDanielsFoundation.org is just how people can donate. We have the best silent auctions going, I think, for our roasts. And we'll do it again next year. So these are just some things, and that's how it came to be. So when Panger said, you know, why don't you do a roast? I could have done a golf tournament. I said, that's a great idea. So we had Doc Emmerich hosted Mickey's roast. And I know when I phoned Doc to do it, I said, Doc, I'm thinking of doing a roast, and I'd like you to be the MC. And as you can picture here, Doc saying it, Doc said, would your first roastee be a former 50-goal right winger? And, you know, he just knew right away it would be Mickey. And then again, going back to my life, the first real voice I heard doing sports on radio when I was 10 or 11 in the sportscast, The World Tonight on CFRB 1010, was a young Dave Hodge. Hockey Night in Canada. He set the standard after Ward Cornell and before Ron McLean, before Dave got himself fired, and went on still a great career in television. And I didn't know Dave well, but I called Dave and I said, Dave, would you host the roast of Scotty Bowman? And he did, and went out of his way to shoot with John Shannon, my former boss. They went out of their way and shot all the links at the Hockey Hall of Fame in Toronto to make it look as professional. John got me a camera crew, Ed Bromley, out of Canada to shoot the stuff, and they sent it here, and we put it together. And Alex Asaf at Fox Sports Detroit, a wonderful producer. She did a great job. So just so many people who worked so hard to put everything together for us, and all the hockey folks that I reached out to, and only one or two said no. Others probably just forgot. I won't tell you who said no. But at any rate, it was great. And I think it went as well as could have been expected. And now we got to keep building for next year. So JamieDanielsFoundation.org is a great way to donate. And I thank you for that, JamieDanielsFoundation.org, or through Cameo. And I appreciate it, Joey. It's going great. And I love to talk about Jamie. My son loved to laugh. And that was another reason why, Joey, we did the roast, because Jamie loved to laugh and his laugh was infectious. So when Darren told me a roast, and I thought, laughing, that's what we need. We got to laugh. We could cry every day, and many days I do, but we got to laugh too. And I think Jamie would have loved it.
That's really an amazing story. And for all of those wondering also, again, JamieDanielsFoundation.org, we have all the information on our website. We will continue to be posting about the Jamie Daniels Foundation on all of our social media sites for the foreseeable future and for as long as we are active, because really, Ken, this is an amazing foundation that you have done in memory for your son. For those that are wondering, directly off of the website, the Jamie Daniels Foundation, a children's foundation initiative, provides education, resources, guidance, and support to people battling substance use disorder so that lives can be saved and healing can be created within families.
And can I tell you one more thing, Joey? And I so much appreciate what you're doing, and every little bit helps, and you're helping lots.
Thank you.
You know, and 4 million people, let's say 4 million young adults get their wisdom teeth out this year, 50,000 of those will have a long-term prescription use of an opioid who will become addicted in some way. 50,000 out of 4 million. That's way too many. Ibuprofen, Tylenol 3, if your dentist says, we'll give you this, don't. And now dentists are prescribing less, and that's why Delta Dental coming on with us is such a major factor, because they're teaching their dentists, you don't have to give this, and you don't need. I said to an oral surgeon friend of mine who was working on some National Hockey League players too, and I said, how many Vicodin do you prescribe? He goes, I don't know, 20 or 25. And just, this was like 2 years ago, 3 years ago, because they didn't know. And I said, why do you prescribe that many? Do you ever follow up with your patients to see how many they used? Why don't you prescribe maybe 6 and see? But then the problem is those who need it and can't get a refill. But all that's changing now. And this was years ago, but right. So all the scripts have come down now. But think about that. If 4 million get their wisdom teeth out, and the story happened that Jamie had his wisdom teeth out and that's who became addicted. No, we got rid of those pills, and you can dispose of them properly. Any prescription drugs that are in your house, you can put them in bleach, then throw them in the garbage. You can crush them up in coffee grinds and then put them in the garbage. Don't put them down the toilet. Don't put them in the incinerator if you got one. Just throw them in the garbage with coffee grinds, with bleach, and dispose of them that way. But don't leave them sitting in your house, because you wouldn't leave a loaded gun in your house. Don't leave prescription bottles in your house you're not going to use because the doctor prescribed too many of them. You don't need them. They should go bad. They should expire, but don't leave them sitting around. Some kid's going to find them. That's how things start when kids are in on a lark, or a friend who's maybe had his family use them and the dad sent the friend out, go over to Joey's house, right? Go pick it up. Yeah, you don't want that. So it's all about education, and that's what we're trying to do. And if you go to jamiedanielsfoundation.org, and if you know somebody who is struggling, we've vetted places across the United States that you can find in our help section, and also a list of questions that whenever you're going, because we didn't know, right? At the time, you just wanted to get the best help for your son and you're panicking at the time. If you go to our site, it'll also instruct you questions to ask. So when you call a facility, is it dual diagnosis? Is it more than just the drugs? Is it also mental diagnosis, psychiatric diagnosis? All those things come into play, questions to ask where you're going, because this is not cheap, but we would have paid anything. And Jamie was 7 months sober before he got patient brokered in Florida. But that's another story we won't even get into, and that's the insurance scam of the industry that they've cracked down on. But too much fentanyl, which unfortunately Jamie was prescribed a pill by a doctor, an addiction specialist that he was sent to by an unscrupulous home that should have never prescribed him that. And that got him back into taking something else, which was a pill in a place that he should have never been at. But he got duped into staying there, which had fentanyl in it, and a speck of fentanyl, 100 times more powerful than morphine, will shock your heart and kill you. And that's what happened to him. So addicts don't want to be addicts. The brain says, you don't want to stop, because if you stop, you're going to be as sick as you've ever been in your life. So the brain says, keep taking me. You don't want to be sick. And that's why they can't. That's why they have to go into detox. That's why we need to talk about it. That's why they need to get help. You need family, you need help, and you need good, safe places to go to.
Ladies and gentlemen, a very touching story. Ken Daniels, ladies and gentlemen, Fox Sports Detroit, Detroit Red Wings play-by-play broadcaster, one of the greatest in all of the NHL. Ken, thank you so much again for coming on and for staying later than originally anticipated.
That's okay.
Well, and for those wondering also, do not forget his book, If These Walls Could Talk, by Ken Daniels, Bob Duff, and also the foreword by your current analyst, your partner, Mickey Redmond, as well. Yeah. He put his 2 cents in there. And again, for those that are wondering where they can find out more about Jamie Daniels Foundation, very simple. But we will still put that all on our website as well. That's right. jamiedanielsfoundation.org. Ken, thank you so much again. Really appreciate the time.
Joey, it's my pleasure. In times of COVID, when I'm just sitting at home, I love to talk to you. So thank you. Appreciate it.
For all of those out there watching right now, and for all of those that do need a helping hand, please, jamiedanielsfoundation.org is the place to go. For all of us here at the Blackjack Media Group, and for myself, Joey Jarzynka, we'll see you next time.